Scattered and okay, I don't want to complain. Aloha, I'm Kau'i, Sai-Dudoit, and I run the Hawaiian language newspapers for the last 10 years. That's what we're here to talk about in case you're in the wrong place. Because there's some really good workshops going on now. No, I'm kidding. We are here to talk about newspapers. We collectively have been working in newspapers off and on for the last couple of years. So I'm going to introduce myself and we'll introduce each of yourselves. We've not met before this very second to talk about what we're going to talk about. So I'm Kau'i, and in 2002, we started a project under the Bishop Museum to get the digital images of Hawaiian language newspapers and run them through an OCR process to create word searchable text files. We did that for 8 years under the Bishop Museum, and this is part of our original staff. So what we were here to talk today about is women and newspapers, how newspapers affected our lives, and where we've gone, in the directions we've gone after that, how we've integrated newspapers into our work and our lives. Aloha, everybody. Aloha. Should I point?
Sure.
Mahina.
Sure. Aloha mai kako. O Mahinapoepoe Paishon-Duarte, Ke Ola no Maui a me Hawaii ka ohana. Mahalo na ke hui ana. Mahina Paishon-Duarte. Aloha.
Okay.
We're just introducing
Sure.
each other, ourselves for now, right?
Do we really need to record this? We're just gonna...
Aloha. Wa'upunihe, Lipe, Lohoa Maheia, Ke Ola, Ke Aloha, I'm Punihe. I live in Hawaii, right down the road from Auntie.
Okay.
Aloha, Ola o Kapalai'ula di Silva no Kailua o Ahumeo.
Kailua. Okay, so we started this project in 2002, and none of us knew anything about any of this. What we first had to do was learn a technology that was brand new to us, and learn about a repository that I, for one, was not as familiar with. Before we took on this project, I knew history. I knew our history, and that's what I studied. Taking on this project opened up a whole nother world to us, to me, while trying to learn the technology and getting this all available. You've heard about the newspaper projects, right? Ke Ola. So recently, we just actually tied up Ke Ola, which was after 10 years and funding had all dried up. There was no more opportunities. They were going to send the work all down to Cambodia to have Cambodians do the work that Hawaiians should be doing. We launched a campaign called Ke Ola to get people, Hawaii hopefully, and abroad, to help us type these pages. The technology is available to do it through OCR, which is optical character recognition, but it's very costly. The programs are costly, the computer equipment, it's really a costly and not very effective for the large repository that we have. The Hawaiian language newspapers run 114 years, from 1834 to 1948. There's over 125,000 pages. Each page prints out to about 10 to 15 pages of text. It's really not cost effective to do OCR. In the 8 years of Ho'olaupai, it cost us probably $1.5 million to do. We've completed about 15,000 pages with $1.5 million. So that's not cost effective. In November of 2011, we launched a campaign to get Hawaii to help us type those pages. We could have, it's cheaper to do it in Cambodia, but we felt really strongly that if they do it in Cambodia, they will gain the knowledge of this repository. And Hawaii and Hawaiians will never understand how important this repository is for us as a people, for us as this place. It is our history. It is everything that happened throughout the course of our history. So, were you a part of Ke Ola?
Well, I did sign up for it, but I didn't really have a chance to go and,
Okay.
But I think it's a wonderful project.
Thank you. Thank you. You've all heard of the project.
I thought it was a wonderful project, especially, like you mentioned, for the repository to go outside of the state and have somebody else do it, when you have a lot of people here that would be more interested and learn more of their history.
Right. Right.
You know, so, yeah, I signed up, but I didn't get a chance to go.
It's okay. You know, about 7,500 people signed up to come in. On the day of our launch, I'm sorry this is going to Ke Ola so fast. Quickly. But on our day of our launch, within 24 hours, we had almost 1,500 people signed up to come and be volunteers. So we were excited. I mean, it was exciting. We thought we'd spend the whole 8 months of the project begging people to help, but they came, they came in droves. We had a lot of technical issues that made it really, it had never been done before. And to manage this and allow everybody to do it in the comfort of their own home or wherever you were, just with some internet access, it was kind of difficult. So we lost some people along the way. And then people, once they started doing it, the first page you ever do, has everybody seen a newspaper page? Have you ever even, I didn't even bring, we have a PowerPoint, but we don't know how to set that up. We don't know how to get it all worked up, and there's nobody here to help us. But that's okay. We're gonna talk story, okay? They're quite large. The normal size of a paper, the longest running newspaper is Mahinapoepoe. It runs for 66 years. It's about 22 by 17. There's 6 columns on the page, about 9 or 8 size font. They were into sharing information and passing on stories. They weren't into graphics. It wasn't about art. It was about information. This was a country being thriving and living, right? So when you type this out, one of those pages is like 12 to 15 pages of text on an 8.5 by 11. So it's really a lot. People got overwhelmed on their first page. We got a lot of letters.
Did you?
We in the 8 months of the project, we've gotten over 10,000 emails we've answered. We didn't even count my own personal email, which got really barraged, or podcast personal email. So
all that time typing.
right, they could have been pages. No, stop. But you know, in the end, the letters that we got from people that did participate, people found their families. And that's what that's why the newspapers are so important. Is because no, you don't know until you go there what you don't know, what is available. So that's why this panel, we thought we'd do this panel. Because more than just the technical and academic benefits of Hawaiian language newspapers, it's about really a hands-on how this affected us personally in our own lives. Because the stories I can tell you about people who have done newspaper pages and what they found and the connections they feel. Okay, so we're gonna talk story. I'm gonna tell you some stories. A couple of years back, we were working at Ho'olaupai. I was in the Bishop Museum archives doing some work. And I saw this auntie. She came in, you can tell she wasn't real comfortable. She didn't do this a lot, but she was searching, trying to find something. So eventually, after watching her for a while, I went up and asked her what she was looking for. So she tells me that she is raising her mo'opuna, a boy and a girl, and the girl had already graduated from Kamehameha, and now the boy was a senior. And his project was to do his mo'okuauhau, to do his genealogy, which they all have to do. But she doesn't know her genealogy because her mother was Hanai, right, we all have this story. Her mother was Hanai, not sure, blah, 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 blah. She knew one name, but didn't know how to connect that. So she was in there, apparently her daughter had died in a car accident and she was raising her mo'opuna. So she has the stress of that. So I'm sitting there watching, well, she only knew one name. And it was a really sad story about her telling me how she couldn't ever connect this for them. And being a Kamehameha, it's they push that, right? It's important, those connections. So she gave me a name. I took her onto our site. We found the obituary of her, the one name she knew, which was her great-grandmother. And in it said who she married, where she was from, where she was born, what she did, who her children were. she was able to connect her whole genealogy with one name. She sat in the Bishop Museum and she was crying. She was so, because she had to have been in her 60s, and it was the first time she connected to her family. But this was through the Hawaiian language newspapers. So you connect that story to the many, many, many stories we have of growing up in Hawaii and not knowing our own stories. We don't know. The heroes that we were taught, they don't look like us, do they? They look different from us. We need to know our own heroes because there are many of them. There are many, our people, our children, they need to see the heroes that look like us and others, because there are many people. But that's what's in the newspapers. There's so many stories in the newspapers. Why don't somebody share something that they like, that they got, a personal something? You can tell them about building the exhibit when we were building it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
That's reaching back to memory banks. What? Okay, so one thing, I've always been a hula person, a meta person, but really a language lover as well. I love learning languages, and I love trying to increase my proficiency and my skill in such language. The best thing for me every day going to work with, not really with these people, yes with these people, but with the newspapers. Because you're going to work with people that you never met before. And you're reading all of their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions every single day. And you become pili to these people in their words and through their words. And their choice of imagery, of language, of just the small subtleties. The way that it tastes when you read it is so vivid and so powerful that I felt like I was growing connections with these authors that I don't even know. And maybe they're related to me. Maybe they're related to my best friend. Maybe they're related to my cousin. Who knows? And all of these gems are sitting there waiting for us to taste them. Have a little bite here and a little bite there. My language self was so enthralled with every sentence that I read. It was like the craziest stories about what's happening in Japan in 1873 and who's getting off of the ship, the Australia, and who really, how can we make that pertinent to us today? Sometimes, Shigo, we can find some way to connect it, and sometimes you can't. It's just so far in the past and so another time that you can appreciate it, but it doesn't mean anything to you. What meant something to me was how they said these things, because it was like a poem. It was like a song in every sentence that I would read at work. The simplest, I went to the store, to the market, and I saw some man selling silk. The quality of language in which these writers would write these thoughts was just on a whole nother level to me. And that was my enjoyment and my experience in doing all of this work and researching, was I could heighten my own understanding, my own speech. I could make myself feel better about what I say and how I say it, because I have perfect examples from our past of what to say and how to say it. So it was just that experience of reading, in my mind, the cleanest way of saying everything. And it's just sitting there, waiting, begging us to read it. And we're all walking around trying to use our olelo in whatever ways we can. The newspapers are the best place to practice. Sometimes it's not in conversing with your friend, or going to university, or reading a textbook. It's reading our old version of textbook. It's reading our newspapers. That was, their language was just on a whole other level.
I guess kind of building off what Kapalai said, one of the things I used to love to do, well, and I didn't even know they existed until you're in there just working away, is all the mele that our kupuna left for us. And I guess I kind of knew that they're mele from like hula stuff, you know, like we'll see the mo'olelo of hi'apekopoli pele in the newspapers, and there's lots of oli and stuff in there. But regular people would write in to share an oli about the birth of a child or the death of a parent. And I kind of got really, I don't know, something just caught me, and I would start to print them out, and I would take them home, and I would, you know, 'cause I would post them on my wall, because like Kapalai was saying, they were so beautiful. I think I forgot how great our kupuna were at crafting these things. And, you know, I'd have friends come over to the house and, you know, come hang out in my bedroom, and they'd see like these postings. And a lot of my friends speak Hawaiian, and a lot of the mele I posted were actually kanikau, so they were for people who they're like, this is a little mournful in here, you know? But I was like, no, but look at the beauty of the language and the mo'olelo that you could learn from those oli and those mele. And so, yeah, I think like Kapalai was saying, it was such an appreciation over time, learning about I think just the amazing wonder of our kupuna, and you can't know until you go. Yeah, and I mean, someone could tell you about it. I'm telling you about it right now, but until you go, and even if you don't speak Hawaiian, even just living in Hawaii and looking at the way they've crafted these words together it's amazing. And if you do speak Hawaiian, I think you're even more blown away, you know. And then it reminded me that, and I think over time the story has evolved, that I'm reminded that our kupuna live within us, and so we have that same ability to do that. You know, it's not like that should be something that has died and that's in the past. That, you know, those are treasures, but those are just reminders to us of the things that are waiting to come out of us. And I think I continue to be reminded of that. I worked on the project when I was about 19. I'm still 19. And then a few years ago, and then when Ike Ku'oko'a started, I did some pages, and so between that time when I was 19 till this year, 10 years later, and I'm 29, I was reminded, getting back into the newspapers, about how amazing our kupuna are. And I don't think that lesson ever gets old, because at different points of our life, it always means something different, and it always teaches us something. I'm not sure how, but I know the project will continue. And I think for me, that's like one of the biggest messages, and I share it with people, that even if you just do one page, because when you do one page, it's like you get kind of like into it. And the first page is the hardest, but it's like the secret garden. Like it just opens you up to this whole new thing. And the way I did my pages was I would put my babies to bed, I would do my work for school, and then I would promise myself, like, before my eyeballs didn't work anymore, like 30 minutes of typing every night. That's how I did it when I was working just this past semester. And after 30 minutes was done, I didn't want to stop. But I knew I had to, because in the morning I would have a migraine if I didn't go to sleep at, you know, whatever time it was. But I had to force myself to stop and then do it again the next night. But I really think, and it's just a way to like keep that dialogue open with your kupuna. So I know we're gonna have a way to continue that. And if you haven't had a page to do, we're gonna have more. Kalamai.
I have a question.
Yes.
How and why did this project even start? Where you go back and get old newspapers and
It has been going on, actually. We aren't the first to do this project. Many others have gone before us, and so I'll take you back. The papers run up to 1948. The last running paper is Hoko Hawaii. It ran out of Hilo, Hawaii. And one of the reasons it stopped running is because there weren't enough people to keep it going, who could olelo, who could understand it well enough to keep the subscription running. So it dies out in 1948, which is a few years later. There's the statehood happens, the transitions that keep happening. Because what you have to overlay in our history, right? And that's why these papers are so important. the history that are contained within these newspapers, you have to overlay the political changes that are happening. So while the changes are happening, they're being documented in this paper until they reach the point where they stopped. So in 1948, when the paper stopped running and no more Hawaiian language papers were being printed, something in our mindsets changed, because you start to see a breakaway happens here, and then they kind of, I don't know why, they get forgotten, and they go back and they end up in archives. People who had them in their collections. My grandmother used to live in Kalapana, and as you walked into their house in the front porch, there was a wall of newspapers. Do you know, until I did this project, it used to be that thing that would fall down and they'd yell at us if we touched it. And they were a language that we never understood. It wasn't until I did this project that I realized the treasure that was sitting on that wall that was an irritation to me. But as time went on, families threw them away because that's what they were. In the 60s, I actually heard the story of this, but through a series of people, Auntie Edith Mackenzie, Ishmael Stagner, and the Mormon Church, they got together because the archives didn't have enough room. They were going to dump. They needed space. Well, one of the first things that were going to be dumped was Hawaiian language materials, because nobody read it. Nobody understood it, right? There weren't a lot of people who were using this language. So, these group of people got together, they got some funding, and they decided to do the Hawaii, what is it called? Microfilming project. So they took a lot of the old material, a lot of them were newspapers, they were identified, and they shot them for microfilm. Microfilm was collected from them, and many of the originals, no one knows where they are now, where the originals actually went. So now they sit in shelves on microfilm discs. Then as time moves on, we move up to the 70s, Hawaiian language starts to be learned and taught larger. In the 70s and 80s, it gets larger. The movement gets larger. They need more material. Hamilton Library, Joan Horry, the Hawaiian collection, they do a project to take these up, and they want to do it. Digitization is happening. They try this thing to do digitization. They do it for a little while. They do a quick down and dirty project. They have a little bit of funding. They do a really good job, but they find that it's really not cost effective. It's going to be really expensive to do this project. So they kind of let it go. But they document it, they index it. So now it all lives in archival houses. At the Bishop Museum, Hawaii Mission Children, Historical Society, Hawaii State Archives, the Mormon churches. It lives in all these places, but it's not in the mainstream, and it's not in our conscious self. It's not in our consciousness. Think of all the history books that are written during these times. One of the topics that are the most written about is the overthrow. It was done without ever looking at the newspapers. Written on the days that they happened, explaining the things that are happening right then and there, but they never make it into the history books. This part never makes it into history. So really, history books are written without our story in it, interpretations of our story. What's been passed down of a story were written into history books. So here we pick it up. This new technology becomes available again. Now it's called OCR. We pick it up again in 2000. Dwayne Steele, Nakila Steele, Ostender, and Puakea Nogomeyer, they pick it up again because Puakea was a Hawaiian language teacher. Hawaiian language teachers have been using this. Hawaiian language students have been using it, but really by piecemeal. You got to go to a microfilm, you put it in a thing, and you sit there, and it's a shot in the dark. You got to hope you find something, right? Because you got to go manually reading and searching for things. There's no index, there's no finding aid to find what you're looking for. So it's kind of a hit and miss thing. So digitization was an awesome thing for preservation. Creating word searchable text files now allows research. It allows scholarship. It allows discussion. It opens the door for so many more things. So that's the progression, really, of where Hawaiian language newspapers have gone. Where they are now, hopefully, is on the cusp of being done. Hopefully. So, through volunteers, we shot to do 60,000 pages. We finished 15,000 under Ho'olaupa'i. There was another 60,000 that needed to be done. Because of the 125,000, only 76,000 have been recovered. There's 50,000 pages still missing. Right. That's a whole nother project. I would love to be on that team. I want to be on that team, right? Wouldn't we all want to be on that team? Go find those papers. They show up once in a while. Every couple of years, somebody gives something to the museum, or they give something and there's some papers in it. So we're still searching. But of the 76,000 available, there's 60,000 that don't have word searchable text files. That's what we put up for Ke Ola, for the volunteers to help us do. We finished 15,000 of the 60. And so now we have 4 months to finish the 45,000 pages. Edit the 15 and finish the 45.
And so can you talk about why 4 months?
Because we're tired now. So we've been doing this for 10 years now. It's not that we're indispensable. We're not. We've been trying to get people to see the importance of this and take it to a higher level. Like this has got to be given more importance. That's what I don't understand. I feel like I'm not a newspaper person. Actually, in 2000, I didn't even touch a newspaper before.
You are now.
But now that's what everybody only knows me as the newspaper. I'm the newspaper lady.
You are now.
But when poor Ke first came up with this crazy idea, it was because within a 24-hour period, 2 things happened. We applied for a grant to try and do a little more, because that's what we do. We piecemeal, get a little more money, try and do a little more. So we got word that no, we didn't get money. It's not funded. Fabulous project. You guys are doing great work. Keep up what you're doing, but we can't fund you this year. Okay, and then within a 24-hour period, we got a call from OHA that a proposal had come to them to send the remaining Hawaiian language newspapers to Cambodia to let Cambodians digitize it. And that's when we just thought, I mean, really, that's the point where you think, okay, we walk away or we give it one last hurrah. Because there's no funding to do this. There's no more. This is just a bunch of crazy people who won't let it go. Right, and so that's how Ke Ola was born. So when poor Ke came up with this crazy notion, I was telling him no, because this is crazy. Then I went to Maui, I got a massage, and then I said yes. So don't ask me anything today because I just got a massage. But when we did it, we had to set parameters. I mean, this is large. It's to maintain 7,000 people moving through a website, grabbing 2 images each, because each one needs the original TIFF image. They need a RTF file to type into. I'm not complaining. This is not a complaint. It's been an amazing experience, but we could only do it for a set amount of time. So we gave it this year as our last hurrah. We've held meetings and forums with institutions, all the institutions you can think of who should be doing this, who are our partners in some ways. Many of them have helped to finance portions of this 1 year of Ke Ola. And it just couldn't come out. We couldn't raise the funds to continue the effort longer. So we have set this year to finish this. We are going like backside of hell on the backside now to get it done.
So if there was more funding, would people be willing to continue the project? New people maybe, or are the original people
the
tired?
Old people.
I said
tired.
Original. Are the original people tired, and would new people? I guess I'm trying to think. I'm just curious. Like, who wants to take over?
Do you want to take it? I dubbed the newspaper lady.
No, I'm just curious, like, for people who watch this in the future, because I think it's going to be on public TV. Like, I'm just curious, like, like, how much money does it really take to run this thing? And
for this 1 year, it took us about $350,000.
And that's for like bodies to do the.
Not so much the bodies, the programming and the technology that it took. See, there was no web capability to do what we just did.
So it's doing that plus the people to
build
run it.
Right. But to get them, find them, figure it out, plan it, and then build it.
So it's like half programming, half staff.
Yeah.
Or so.
Sort of.
Sorry,
yeah.
maybe not 50%.
Yeah.
Some and some.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's what it shows.
300,000.
And now that the programming is done, would it still be that same amount, or would that go down because
it would go
it's
down?
There, it's set,
well, it depends on the
maintained.
level. It depends on the level. Because is this all going over your guys' head? Because we could have this discussion ourselves.
You're right.
The technology that's required, because you have the site that the public sees, you have the things that's going in the back, you have the mirror sites that are happening, and then there's the partner sites that hold the archives, which is our New Zealand. It's still DL. So what it takes to keep all that and not lose things, and it's kind of nuts. There's storage spaces, there's the technology to ensure we don't lose them, and tracking. Our users were able to come in, take their page, do their pages, and then upload it back. At the point of submission, they're able to dedicate their page. So they could dedicate it to my tutu kawahine, right? And so each page now has to be followed with this dedication and a link who the original typist was, all this takes really a lot of stuff. And now we've closed the public site. July 31st was lahui with this fabulous ceremony, which was fabulous at Iolani Palace, and we closed the public site. And so now we're figuring out how and what we're doing, because we're getting letters from people that are having withdrawals, which is really nice. It's really nice. One of our typists, volunteers, wrote us a letter. She's trying to find other projects to type. So she found the National Archives of America. And she volunteered and she started typing things for them. But she wrote to us, she said they only have 700 pages to do. And it's all in English. It's not as rewarding as what we did with the newspapers. So we're working out the glitches right now, but there is a phase 2, and we're going to open up again to ask those volunteers if they want. And every day we receive letters from them. They're waiting. Let us come back in. So we have one more glitch before we send that letter out, because there's going to be another push, which will take maintenance and covering and following this all again. But you had a question, sorry.
Yeah, my other question is, so these volunteers have come forth to type this for you. Is someone proofreading it because they don't speak Hawaiian?
Oh yeah, that's where the nightmare is. That's what I didn't mention. The nightmare of this. Okay, let me just qualify all of this. There are people who can do a newspaper page, in 2-3 hours. The largest paper, Ke Ola, 3 hours. That's the staff was allowed only 3 hours to do, and that's a lot of time. Some people take 5 hours, some people take 10 hours. Your first page is really, because you're not ma'a, and depending on your language ability, this all takes a long time. So say it takes you 20 hours to do your first page. Okay. But there's a tutu, because there is a tutu, who didn't know computer. She didn't know how to turn it on, never even touched a computer before, but she wanted to help do this project. Over the course of the 8 months, we got emails from her. But first, somebody else was writing the emails for her and telling us what she wanted us to know. She wanted to do it. She didn't know how. She didn't have a computer. Over time, we got her computer. She even came to our house. We showed her how. Got her a computer. She started working. Got her mo'opuna to help her. This all went on until the end, maybe like the 4th month. She finished her first page. And this tutu was working almost every single day on typing this newspaper page. That one page from that one tutu is going to be more than the one guy who could do it in 3 hours. But that's the social benefit of us doing it ourselves, is because that tutu, she's always going to remember this. She found in this work that she did, she found her connection, and she doesn't feel disconnected anymore. That's the social benefit of this project. we really could have done this without Hawaii. I mean, technically, we could have sent it down to Cambodia, to Guam, there are many places who do it for cheap. But that's not what we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to get this back into the mainstream. We were trying to get it to the point where Hawaii knows their history. They know we are connected. The taproot is deep here. I mean, it's not good enough that we just wear Hawaiian-looking things and that that's not enough. We really got to feel the taproot. We really have to know that the people who walked here before us, they took great pains, great, grand sacrifices to leave this for us. And it wasn't just news. They weren't just saying Mrs. Vehi's cow got loose over there. It wasn't just, but they did say that too, They told us everything. One of the, I think, I'm talking way too much.
Proofreading.
Oh, we were on proofreading, sorry. The process. The process of this, whenever a page gets done, it comes to the back. And then we take it to what we call the backside. And on the backside, we have a team whose job solely is to check this. So we have two teams. The first team is the checkers, and they check for completeness. If you forgot a column, so they check that first, and then they throw it to the next team, the team of reviewers. The reviewers pick it up, and they check for accuracy and content. So, everybody, one page comes through, but that moves a couple of places before it comes to the backside. And so of the 15,000 pages that were done under Ke Ola, we are just coming up on 5,000 pages in the back. So we need more help in the back, and we're just getting that too. We're searching for people with language ability, and we're searching for people who are just really, really detail-oriented and can help us do this work. So that's what we're looking for on the backside, not to finish this work. So yes, it's edited. Everything's edited. It would be really to go through all this and just, because, no offense, but
Give them the test.
there's a test.
Give them the test.
We did test. Everybody did tests before they started doing, working. We were working on the whole play to check your eyes, check your. What is amazing though, and I didn't know from doing newspapers for so long, I read things and I'm standing right next to people and they're typing. They're not even typing anything near what it says. But my eyes are so ma'atu. I think I can read without most of the word there. That's just how I read now. Because in newspapers, you got black splotches, rips, and pages. And so what you don't think, you're typing what you think you see, which doesn't necessarily mean it's what is there. So that's part of the fun of newspapers, is what comes at the end. Does that answer your question? Could you share something?
I don't know. I guess I was going to talk a little bit about connections and relevance and application. So I just share a little bit. It's been a blessing to kind of prepare for this panel discussion, because it's really helped to solidify how newspapers are important to me as a Kanaka, as a Wahine Hawaii, and I think the story that I want to share with you folks, I'm sure will resonate with everyone. I think it's a common thread for all of us. So in my late teens, early 20s, I was at Ke Ola. We helped to establish that school, and I was a young teacher. And at that time in my life, I was teaching many of Auntie Kaui's children. Hello, children.
Hello, children.
I looked into the newspapers for insight as to how to teach. It's one thing to just transfer information, but I wanted to look at pedagogy. How do we transfer and convey knowledge, skills, information? How do we do this in a way that is uniquely Hawaiian? And just a constant for newspapers and its application is that you don't have to guess, because it's a blueprint for us. It's been codified for us, and so it's such a great resource and reference point, and I'm sure it was intentional. So instead of kind of
you know, taking 20, 30 years to perfect that art of pedagogy and so forth, I could turn to the newspapers and discover how our kupuna transfer and convey knowledge, again, that is uniquely Hawaiian. I thought, again, that was really important because I wanted to get it right. I wanted to do good for our students. Kind of moving from early 20s into my mid 20s, early 30s, establishing a career, working at He'eia, Paipai He'eia, NOAA, and other places, particularly in my work with natural cultural resources. There's very, very specific application because, for example, when I worked at He'eia Fish Pond, located in the Ahupua of He'eia, to be a good ecosystem-based manager, fish pond person, you have to know the intricacies of that particular Ahupua system, where the fisheries, names of wind and rain, water resources, and how water moved, and all of that information was contained in the newspapers and reported to the newspapers for that kind of information so that we could better take care of those places so that we could feed our people. Then moving into kind of early 30s, marriage and having a child, in preparation for kind of our private little ho'a'o, prior to the conventional ceremony. I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to just make it up. I didn't want to make up, you know, how the ho'a'o ceremony, the details of that, how that worked out. I thought it was just too important of an event. I didn't want to go just solely by how it felt in my na'au. I wanted to be a part of long-standing traditions. And then in preparation for the birth of my only son, again, I knew that was an important time to, you know, get my genealogy together and to look back again. And again, I looked specifically into Ku'oko'a, and that helped to, along the way, you know, as we all know, in preparing genealogy and so forth, you always go back to it and you always find more. You know, different times, for whatever reasons, it'll come together in the way it needs to at those specific times. And so when I had my son, I knew that I wanted to gift him with his genealogy and have, you know, take it back to several generations, and we did that. And then just recently, in my mid-30s, going on to 40s, you know, family and death is something that we contend with, especially as we take care of aging family members. Unfortunately, my very close cousin I was raised with recently passed away from breast cancer. She was only 38, just a few years older than myself. And the reason why I share that with you is because, again, I went back to the newspapers to prepare for an Oli Aloha, and I wanted to use a particular format that would honor her. And so now newspapers is a means to remember our loved ones, and it always has been. It has, you know, as we know, Oli Aloha and Kanikau. So I never knew it, but newspapers have always been a part of my life and very much impactful in the way that I behave, how I think, how I make decisions, how I learn, how I share, how I love, and how I feel. And so I think it's something that we all need to cherish, and we need to figure out how we can continue the work and make sure that the work gets done. Because again, it's not for us. We're really blessed, our generation, that we have the technology, the contemporary technology to reach back. And we must do this because they made it accessible for us. So,
yes. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
I just have a question that you brought up on natural resources, and when you were at the He'eia Fish Pond, and you mentioned that you read back in the newspapers, lelo, Keia, the winds, the rains, the waters. Come forward 50 years, how much of it has changed and how much of the natural landscape has remained, so that the as you as a natural resource conservator, how did that affect your job?
Exactly what you said, Auntie. It served as a baseline for us, baseline for management, so that we could, by having a reference point, you know, in the late 1800s, the fish pond, according to certain reports, could yield this much, or according to these letters, just above the fish pond, it was vegetated with X, Y, and Z native shrubbery. So if anything, it helped us to establish a baseline so that we could detect the changes over a period of 100 to 50, 10, and, you know, to present. And that's really important in making decisions and how we move forward. It's been a good baseline study. Another really specific, concrete example of how actually newspapers has helped to kind of shape policy in a way. In our work with NOAA and Papahanaumokuakea Ke Ola Marine National Monument, there was a really unique and special project that was undertaken whereby researchers from Aotearoa and in Hawaii were looking at climate change through the newspapers. And again, it's really easy for us to think of the newspapers as something that is not relevant for today, but that was a perfect example of how climatic information was preserved, and how it's so important, how the newspapers are our national archive and repository.
Are there any other questions, or anybody want to share anything else? I think we're coming up on a time, but I guess we should try to go on a schedule here. Does anybody have questions? No?
Share the resources, www.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm just mystified about the fact that, the Hawaiian language to me is just so amazingly rich. And to think that maybe going to Cambodia to get help with this, I guess I don't understand what that would look like. You know, I'm trying to understand why our beautiful language culture would need to go someplace else to learn about it, use it, whatever, as far as the newspapers. What would that look like?
What would their work look like?
No,
or?
yeah, how would that, they don't know Hawaiian language.
No.
Correct.
And it comes back looking like gibberish.
Thank
It
you.
truly does, so it's not really word searchable. That's part of what we have to edit, actually.
More work on the back end.
More work on the back end. It's just more editing for us to do. But we you know, it goes through phases where it's really cool to speak Hawaiian. It's really cool. It's it goes up and down. The fact that only 95% of us don't, and only 5% of us do, there's our problem. Because it can't be accessed by the majority. Even after all this work, even if every single page was done and every single word was searchable, so who's going to explain to somebody what that says? That's our big problem. The disconnections that we have as a people, as a culture, are large. But we've got to understand that if we don't fix them now, if we don't maintain some semblance of preservation for when 20% of us speak it, for when something else happens, for when Duolingo creates a Hawaiian language training program that you can do online, for when those things happen, if we wait till that happens, this will be gone and there's no more, the treasures have all been dismantled. So we have to do this now. There's a lot of reasons why. It's not sexy enough, it's not short enough, because to do this project is a long-term commitment. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But the impacts and effects are also not just going to happen in a blink of an eye. They're going to last the course of our lifetimes. So all of us, well, most of us here now, from when we started this project in 2002, okay, I was a mother, but...
You're still a mother.
Yeah.
No, I was trying to think how many kids I had at this time. I had all my kids already. That was my last. I was pregnant with my last child when we started this project. And there's 12 of them. These two weren't mothers. So they were all young, hip, cool college students. Now they're matured, hip, cool. But they're mothers and they're leading things, and they've all stepped into places of leadership in their own circles. But still we talk about it. Still I see them integrating it into whatever they're doing. So the point of this whole workshop was to show that it wasn't just a job. What it did for us, we made a connection that will last the course of our lives. We found ourselves, and we found our own kupuna. And we want that for everybody. It needs to happen for everybody, because then we won't have to fight to keep and save this. You'll all know. But you'll tell your families. See, we can all talk about these plans until Hawaiians unite and blah, 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 blah. The strength of us is in our families. So each family has to understand and make that a priority to participate in making this be important. At least by starting the dialogue to understand that it exists and it is there. I mean, that's, I think, what needs to start happening for this all to happen. But we are over time now, and thank you so much for joining us in this really quick impromptu talk. Mahalo and You guys are